I want to first say that I want to dedicate this talk to all the folks who lean into the unknown and share their stories anyway. I want to dedicate this talk to my wife, Amy. Oh. I want to begin by sharing with you all a part of myself. It's something that I don't talk frequently about. When I was 17, I was diagnosed with manic depression. And I want to stop there because by uttering those two small words, manic depression, I've just created a very strong negative ripple effect in this auditorium. Perhaps you're now viewing my body differently than you did when you heard my intro. Perhaps you're ascribing stereotypes onto my body that aren't mine. I think it's important that you all know that at this point, I want to say thank you all for listening, and I want to go off stage, but I'm going to stay. So much clapping. We're all familiar with the phrases depression. We're familiar with the term mania, right? Perhaps you've used these words colloquially, right? I feel so depressed today. He's acting so manic. For me, mania and depression were felt in more invasive, regular, everyday ways, right? They literally invaded into my everyday. And although this is just my experience, I think it's important to know, too, that everyone's experience is radically different. I was 17. I graduated high school. I was beginning my journey into a local JC. And for me, depression felt like an overwhelming weightiness. I felt like I was in a room without a doorknob. Getting out of the bed and beginning the day was a success in and of itself. I was so suicidal that I couldn't drive, so my mother would drive me to my college, wait for 3 hours in the parking lot, pick me up, drive me back home. Although it wasn't as frequent or as long-standing, for me, mania was an overwhelming sense of focus and energy, and I truly felt invincible. By the time I finished my Ph.D. work, I was hospitalized 4 times. Now, this is not how I was going to start my TED Talk, not even close. I was going to talk to you all about the statistics surrounding madness. I was going to talk to you about semantics. I was going to tell you about the history of how we conceive of and inscribe madness. And it wasn't until the 4th draft of my talk that I realized I had completely written myself out of this conversation. And I had to pause and ask myself, why? Why in a talk where I was going to explore the negative ripple effects created by the ways in which we conceive of madness had I written out my narrative, right? A narrative that so completely fit into the conversation. And the answer is simple and I think absolutely problematic in its simplicity. And it's one word. It's shame and it's stigma. Even as I stand here before all of you, I am feeling very apprehensive about how I am being read, how my body is being read by my former, my current, my future students. How is my body and my identity being read by my colleagues? Am I being read as inferior, as incompetent, as untrustworthy? Some of you might even be sitting and thinking quietly to yourselves, but she doesn't look crazy. And to that question, I ask you, but what does craziness look like? And in fact, we have been taught what craziness looks like, right? Many institutions in our society have taught us and have helped us cultivate a very strict and rigid understanding of madness. And just to illustrate the speed at which this happens and has happened for all of us since we were very young, I want you all to pause with me and think. What do you think of? What images, what connotations, what do you think of when you hear the word insane? What do you think of when you hear the word crazy? What connotations and images come to mind when you hear the phrase mental illness? Perhaps your thoughts and your images are informed by the way the news media ascribes disabilities and psychiatric disabilities and madness. Perhaps your thoughts are informed by literature, right? By graphic novels, by the movies. I go to the movies. Okay? Perhaps you thought of Girl Interrupted, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Psycho, Mommy Dearest, or A Beautiful Mind. Irregardless of where you've given, these images or where you've gotten these images from, I think that a very rigid list of stereotypes gets created. And although we could probably sit together and keep adding to this list, a very brief list is as follows. Folks with psychiatric disabilities are often viewed as being dangerous, unpredictable, incompetent, unstable, irrational, and irresponsible. Now, the images or connotations that you so quickly call to mind when I ask you all to pause and just meditate on the words insane, crazy, and mental illness, the images that I've pulled up that my mind went to, and these list of stereotypes, this is why it took me 4 drafts to write myself in this talk. The sheer universality of these terms and these images, right, and the weightiness regulate folks with psychiatric disabilities, regulate me, right? I think it's really important to note that unlike other illnesses of the mind, psychiatric disabilities carry with them something that's very distinct and unique. They carry a moral judgment on the individual. Okay. So, what do we do with all of this? Before telling you that, I want to tell you what the purpose of this talk is not. I think often when folks with disabilities of any kind share their narratives or speak, they are often seen as an inspiration. Their story is meant to be heard and is meant to inspire you to bettering your life as non-disabled folks, or even as other disabled folks. I am here to tell you that I am not your inspiration. That's not my purpose. The purpose of this talk is to ask that we collectively cultivate a community and a space for unlearning the stereotypes and stigmas that we ascribe to psychiatric disabilities. Okay. I want us to live in a place where someone sharing that they have manic depression is as benign as someone saying to another person, I have diabetes, right? I want us to live in a place where the moral judgments that often get placed onto folks with psychiatric disabilities is removed. I want us to live in a place where I can come before a group of people or just a person this way and stand and say, my name is Shayda Kafai. I'm a professor in the Ethnic and Women's Studies Department at Cal Poly Pomona. I have manic depression. Thank you.